Shout out to Ashley for sending me this story. Y'all clearly can see what this image is right here. And I wanted to find an image that did not show the destruction of Black Wall Street. I wanted to show more of the thriving side of it, or what I wish could still be here to this day if it wasn't for you know who. But the reason why I'm talking about this today is because he sent me this article that came from the Atlanta Black Star that was posted on January 19th, where black business owners and black businesses are saying that they are being shut out of this Black Wall Street revitalization thing that they have going on. Basically, it sounds to me like they're trying to whitewash Black Wall Street, and they're not allowing the black business owners to even get even a piece of the pie. So you come in and destroy, your ancestors destroy a prominent black town, and then 100 years, I can't believe it's gonna be 100 years in May. 100 years later, you shut out black people from getting businesses where black business literally thrived at one point. What have I told y'all about Palm Colored not being far removed from their ancestors? You're going to destroy the town and then build on top of it for your own benefit. Because believe it or not, they didn't just do or kill people and destroy the town and businesses. They also looted and took money to put into their own businesses. A lot of businesses that are thriving today that are white owned, especially if they're probably in that area, came from the destruction of this town. Just like a lot of businesses, like Fortune 500 companies today, are thriving off of slave labor. And these are the same people that say we don't deserve reparations. We literally built, our ancestors literally built this establishment on their back, day in and day out for over 400 years, and didn't get a dime for it. But guess who did get paid? The slave masters. They got paid for loss of labor, loss of property labor. The nerve. The article reads, amid the revitalization of the business districts in Tulsa, Oklahoma, black entrepreneurs say they are being shut out of acquiring loans, tax incentives, and property in the most desirable regions 100 years after the Tulsa Race Massacre. Doesn't that sound like something a lot of black people go through today when they say business loans and tax incentives? Sounds a lot like what black business owners go through today when trying to acquire that outside of this. About $42 million worth of tax incentives and loans intended to fund development in Tulsa's historic Greenwood district has largely benefited white-owned firms that won the majority of contracts to develop lucrative parcels closest to downtown. The Washington Post chronicled in a recent report. Why am I not surprised? I literally alluded to that before I even reread this part of the article. Under Oklahoma law, the distribution of these incentives and loans is governed by a race-blind process. City officials have only recently turned their attention to racial disparities in property ownership in the district. Although officials plan to make more land available for redevelopment, the black entrepreneurs have already been shut out of the most desirable areas of Greenwood. Basically, they got gentrified out. A century after the 1921 massacre, a single one-block commercial stretch south of the interstate remains black-owned in a community where black Americans once thrived in the epicenter of black business and culture. The violence began a century ago when a black teenager was accused of assaulting a white girl in an elevator. Their go-to lie. When a group of black men showed up at the courthouse to defend the teen, who was barricaded inside the building with the sheriff, a fight ensued with a mob of white men, and the melee became a conflagration of violence that carried to the Greenwood district. Over an 18-hour period in 1921, between May 31st and June 1st, white mobs attacked, burned, and looted thriving business district that had become known as Black Wall Street. Thousands of survivors were left homeless, and reports of what occurred were largely silenced in media reports. At least 300 people were killed and more than 800 were injured. More than 1,200 homes and 60 businesses were destroyed. No black property owners received compensation, and city and state officials did not commit money to rebuilding the community in the aftermath of the attack. Tulsa native Guy Trope, who owns a coffee shop in the Greenwood district, expressed frustration about the disparities in land and property ownership in the region. It's hard to stomach the idea that a museum and tourism will fix the challenges of systemic racism. I came to take back what's rightfully ours, the 54-year-old Trope told the Post. Who owns in there? It's not us. The only thing we own are homes. But big industrial buildings, land zone for commercial development, we don't have it. Trope returned to the city after a career in sports consulting. The Tulsa Development Authority and the State University system own a significant portion of the 35 blocks of buildings that comprise the Greenwood district. Through the revitalization plan over the past 10 years, the Tulsa Development Authority has sold a half dozen prime parcels of land to private developers. Jot Hartley, general counsel for the Tulsa Development Authority and one of the several figures who spoke to the Post about the revitalization, said bias is not what keeps black entrepreneurs from assessing the incentives offered by the city. Some of these projects have been rather large and require capital that's not ordinarily available to just anybody unless they are already in the business of developing large projects, Hartley said. The authority said it considers developers' ties to the community and experience with financing, but does not give consideration to a person's race. City officials have been resistant to calls for reparations for descendants of victims of the massacre. The Tulsa Development Authority responded to a lawsuit filed by a 105-year-old survivor and other descendants of massacre survivors seeking redress for the violence with a motion to dismiss. Keon Kamas, Tulsa Chief of Economic Development, said the city plans to develop 55 additional acres on smaller parcels north of the interstate and will promote actively among black developers. There's a fervent commitment to ensuring that black-owned businesses have an opportunity to be a part of the revitalization, Kamas said. Trope said an economic stimulus package should be used to allow black entrepreneurs to rebuild Black Wall Street. Parcels north of the interstate should be made accessible to black business owners by deeding land, providing grants, and offering low-interest loans so the atrocities of the past could be addressed. That's the thing. They don't want to address it. If they wanted to, they would have did it. Or if they didn't want to address it, they would not have destroyed it. But we know what it was. That's why I think that white chick was a plant. I believe that white girl was a plant. Historical Black Wall Street is gone. It's dead, he said, but its spirit can be revived. That's crazy. But this is a reality that many black people still to this day who want to thrive have to go through. But a lot of people don't want to talk about it because you have some black people that don't want to talk about it because their fear of stepping on masses' toes. And then you have palm color that don't want to talk about it because they don't want to relive the era of their ancestors' past. So it's just easier for them not to talk about it. But they'll be the same ones to say, don't forgive and don't forget and don't forgive. And y'all know exactly what event I'm talking about because apparently their problems are the worst in the world compared to everybody else's. Everybody should just be feeling sorry and bad for them. And only them. That's why I don't be feeling bad when stuff be happening to them like that. I really don't. Because they don't feel that same for us. They feel they have a contempt for us. So as a collective, always telling us to pull ourselves up by our bootstraps. And when we do, that's still not good enough. But you know what? We do not take morality lessons from them. Look at how they acted as a collective on January 6th. You know, we can use that as a counter to almost every argument they come up with us now. And we better use it. Just say January 6th, January 6th. I just did a video about a palm-colored man who said that white people are now starting to be called terrorists and how they feel now to be like black people. Excuse me? Black people aren't being out here being called terrorists like that. Black people did not go and storm the Capitol building. Nor did they go out there and commit wars and drop bombs on nations. Y'all did that, whether recent or in the past. And the way it's looking and shaping up, most likely the future. It's crazy. Their atrocities are so predictable. Like, we don't even need to consult with a crystal ball or a psychic to tell what their future holds. As far as destruction goes, I keep saying to myself, if Wuvit did not happen last year, could you imagine how many possible mass school shootings could have occurred, especially when so many happened, if not in 2019 and 2018, or between those 2 years? Like, that was a thought that was literally floating around in my head. But then have the nerve to call us savages. Notice how, ever since what happened on January 6th, I have not seen a lot of these journalist places, if you want to call it that, talk about Chicago like that. You know how they like to talk about Chicago every other weekend? About how all these shootings happen by the Phantom? I really haven't seen them, or maybe I just didn't care to go look for it. Because that's what dominated the airwaves. That's what dominated the news. And like Harvey said in one of his most recent videos, we have to make sure that that stays out there. Don't let that get under the rug, because that was a huge deal. That was no small feat. But y'all let me know what y'all think about this down in the comments. Like, share, subscribe. Make sure, if you haven't done so already, to text that number pinned in the comments below so you can receive notifications every time I upload a new video. And I will talk to you in the next one.